We're tackling a different type of problem, which is that AI is hard, it's complex, it's costly, it's time consuming. It starts with all that data transformation that Jean talked about with, disgruntled data scientists being forced to put the role of data engineers. Well, we thought of a better way. We want to empower product teams and every product team to build, launch, and manage their own AI apps into their products and workflow in a matter of minutes without any data science experience. And here I'm going to say something very heretical to Jean, which is without any pre-existing data. It doesn't have to be that hard. For a majority of business cases, AI can be straightforward and it can be launched immediately with time to value gained quickly. So that's what we're accomplishing at Savvy AI. We were just granted a patent for our entire process, which is very exciting. There's a land speed record at 8 short months for that. So we know that we're onto something innovative, and our goal is just to spread AI throughout the entire organization by empowering teams to upskill.
Thanks, Maya. So lastly, I want to introduce Jignesh Patel. Jignesh has the greatest talent recruitment or attraction model in the world. He's a professor at the PhD level teaching data scientists at UW-Madison. He's a significant figure in data science, one of the great data scientists in the world. He's built a few companies, one that, this is his model. He teaches at a PhD level. He hires all the good ones. He builds companies around them. And then a few years later, he exits, and then he goes back off sabbatical and teaches again to find his next group of employees. That's all I could figure on that piece, but it's brilliant. He's exited to Twitter. He has exited companies to Pivotal Labs or Pivotal Software, where he became chief scientist. He's a friend, and Data Chat is a tool I'm more familiar with. It's conversational intelligence, although that language seems to have matured over the last couple of years. And they're doing amazing things. Companies like Meta or Facebook use Data Chat as a tool within their company, and then it scales all the way down to earlier stage companies like GenoPalette that's doing interesting things in terms of nutrition and so forth. But Jignesh, I want to welcome you to the conversation. We'd love to hear from you about Data Chat, and it's really good to see you.
Same here, Todd. We miss you here in Wisconsin, and really good to see everyone in that room. It's so exciting that you guys are actually building products in this multi-day session, and there's nothing that makes it more real than actually getting things to work. And this is what Data Chat is. Todd gave away my secret as to how I do this thing. So if you look at my current research papers, you can tell what my next startup is going to be. But what we are doing here at Data Chat, which is a 40-person team based in Wisconsin, is this very simple idea that to get meaningful insights from data, as the other speakers have alluded to, you have to use the method of data science. But the way we practice data science today is just madness. We tell people to go and learn how to use complicated tools or learn how to write code. And people like Dean will come in and make their life a lot easier, but still it's a very technical thing that you have to go through at times to get from data to insights to the full process of data science. We take a very simple approach to it, which is to say data science is like problem solving. For problem solving, there's a human component and there is a mechanical component to it. So imagine you're trying to solve a 2D puzzle. The human intelligence part of it is to say, what do I start with? Maybe I start with a corner piece, I see a little red, I'm trying to find an edge piece. And you're basically problem solving in iteration, where in each iteration you're saying, what do I do next? And then how do I do that step next? Notice in this 2D puzzle solving, that second part of each iteration, how do I do that? You don't even think about it, right? You just do it. You just move the piece because that's zero effort effectively. You don't have to learn anything. And that's kind of how we do data science. We say, to really get meaningful insights from data, you still need the human intelligence that is involved in driving through with a gut feel or a sense of the business and say, this is the question I want to ask. I see the answer. What do I do next? Instead of writing code or clicking buttons on screens or trying to go through complex tool sets, all you do in Data Chat is just talk to it. And hence Data Chat, right? You chat to it. You say, do this on this data. Tell me what patterns are in this data. And then we use Gen AI to convert all of that stuff. Behind the scenes, we will write the appropriate code, whether it's in Python or SQL, And now you can stream through big data sets, millions of rows are no problem for us, or even small problems that Todd alluded to, right? Some of our customers have very large data sets, some have very small data sets, but they all have one characteristic. The user that is getting value out of it is basically someone who is playing this role of an army of one, getting data science done without coding in a way that is transparent and tractable, because not only will we produce you the answer, but we'll also tell you why we produce this answer for you, so that if the answer that we produce is wrong, you can reason about it. It's what's called a classical case in Gen AI, of course. That transparency is built into the answer that we provide, because we believe when you have transparency, you can build trust. We give you an answer to this method that you can trust, and you can do anything with it. So to complete the whole loop, we want to empower the power of data science, give that to everyone, but do it in a transparent and trustful way. That's what we do.
Jignesh, just so you're aware, your audio is going a little in and out. It's good for 30 seconds, and then it's not good for 30 seconds, or so forth. So I'll give you a second on that. But when I come to you, Maya, I just want to talk about, because we've spent most of the last couple of days talking about generative AI. We've looked at fundamental tools like ChatGPT. We've looked at Midjourney for text to image and so forth. We've talked about other tools. But I follow you religiously on LinkedIn, and I would suggest everybody does if you want to learn about AI from every level. Maya helped me understand that it's unlikely that large language models are sentient unless we shove somebody in a box, I think was the term. And I want you to just spend a little time, Maya, talking about the impact that generative AI, and specifically ChatGPT and GPT-4, and the tsunami, in Gary Bolas's words, that has hit the last few months, the impact that's had on your company and other companies who have been in the AI space for some time and are working on different problems than generative solves.
Absolutely. Generative was what I described last year as an iPhone moment in our industry. There was a bit of an AI winter that occurred, maybe not for the co-panelist here. They were still heads down working in machine learning and AI. But for many people, AI was very behind the scenes. Machine learning was behind the scenes. Our packages just arrived at our house on time. Our planes were at our gates. Content was just personalized on our websites, and we didn't think about how that happened. And then all of a sudden, generative let loose. And by the way, that's been going on for a while, but we got ChatGPT 3.5 that let loose on an unsuspecting world back in Q4 of last year. And it created this visceral response that I haven't seen since the iPhone, which is like people got it. Like when you used to talk about mobile and the transition into mobile, people were like, you're telling me this little Motorola Razr in my pocket is going to be my remote control for my life? Like, no, it's not. You're joking. And when you talk to people about AI, their eyes would sort of glaze over at cocktail parties and go, oh, that's awesome. Linear algebra, cool. Okay, gotta go. I'm gonna go over there right now. But then all of a sudden, you could create with AI. You can type in a few prompts that anybody can do, and you can create music, you can create images, you can create texts and sonnets. And it resonated with people and knocked us out of our AI winter, and it created a response worldwide of, oh my God, what is this? And it seemed to talk to us, and it seemed to be sentient, and it seemed to know all the answers to everything. And people almost like went overexcited. Like, this is going to solve all our problems, is a large language model that's going to predict what the next piece of text is in answer to our query. But in reality, machine learning, as these two gentlemen can attest to, has been around for a very long time. When I look at the industry, I see generative as a subset of AI and machine learning, where it is AI and machine learning that create. And it creates amazing things. But there's still what I call the soccer mom, which is machine learning, predictive and decision-based machine learning. It just gets the job done. So there's room in that big umbrella for different types of AI, but we need to know what are the use cases. And the first thing that we have to ask ourselves is, where is this AI useful and where is that AI useful? Because it's not one paintbrush that just paints the world with AI and says it's going to be one model to solve them all.
Thanks. Jean, following on those points, you made the point earlier that you're waiting for good strategic reasons around putting generative into your product. But I don't know that we've reached peak hype, but we have to be close. Has that level of adoption, the speed and scale of the adoption of ChatGPT, has that had an impact, a positive impact or a negative impact on sales cycles, on business as it relates to AI and ML and other forms of AI in the enterprise, from your perspective?
Yes. So we started in 2016 with Cerebri. So when we went to customers, they kind of didn't have a clue what we were talking about, except for the 4 or 5 guys in the basement that were banging away at data science for one reason or another, whether they were using AI, OR, whatever. But in the last 4 or 5 months, it's not just ChatGPT. It's like Maya said, there's a myriad number of techniques to use that generate, because nobody pays you to use a technique. They pay you to get the right answer and the best answer, because you're in decision support in effect for most of this. So everyone now wants to have AI infused into their workflow. Doesn't matter if they're doing microgrids, solar, whether they're doing DoD work, whether they're doing customer experience. It doesn't really matter. Everyone now, over the last few months, has realized, oh my God, the bus is leaving the station and I'm being left behind. And once they sit down and go through it, generative AI is fantastic. It's just got a specific use, and it's really, really good at it. It's the best that we've ever seen. There are other problems that require different kinds of predictions and things like that are more suited to DNNs and all of these other techniques. So, yes, it's had a profound impact. What we've seen, I think the best way to describe it is when we go to meetings, people pay closer attention.
Okay, Jignesh, you made a strategic decision to add generative AI to data chat. Which almost seems redundant to me because you've been in the chat business for some time. But can you talk a little bit about how you came to that decision and maybe talk about the value that it's added in your sales cycles, adoption curves of clients, expansion of existing customers, et cetera?
Yeah, first I'd say I agree with what Maya and John said, that there are classical techniques like machine learning that still run the business structured world. Like you can get away from XGBoost and GBM and methods like that. But for us, we started many years ago when the name data chat was essentially based on what we observed when it was at Pivotal, when data science was just starting to become adopted in enterprises. You would have data scientists who would say, I need to analyze this data. They'd open up a Jupyter notebook, then start to fill up the Jupyter cell. How would they fill up the Jupyter cell? They would basically say, this is what I want to do in this step. I want to extract this feature from the string column, the middle 4 digits. Then they would literally go to Stack Overflow, convert their intent into an English sentence, type in, try to search through what code fragment that seems closest to what was the right fragment, paste that into the cell, adapt it to try to make it work, and that's how they would build up the notebook. A lot of notebooks get built up through cut and paste. And so data chat started saying, what if you could just take that data, convert to code, and stop that madness of going back and forth? And literally, we needed that Gen AI technology for that code transformation, writing skills, but it wasn't available. And we did all kinds of crazy things internally to try to make that work through traditional natural language methods. But it's only when Gen AI stuff became affordable, and it's still, as John said, it's still pretty expensive. That's why we are training our own models and bringing the cost down for our customers. The whole magic came through. So our dream from 5 years ago was to make this Gen AI stuff with data science. We had built a lot of pieces, but the main piece that was not economically available was this ChatGPT-like LLM model, and ChatGPT is just one of the different LLM models. And that really is magic in terms of what it can regurgitate. It's really a statistical model, so it's regurgitating, but you can give it a lot more data and it regurgitates better. It mimics better. And obviously, we don't often what it gives us, we do a whole bunch of stuff in our stack to clean it up and present and make sure that it's as correct as we can. But that was the missing piece for us. And a dream always was to go from chat to the end data science product with nothing else in between. To what Maya said, the interface is so simple and that is so elegant and it changes the business cycle. We are no longer in the process of saying you install this and you see a complex screen. All you see is a chat box. Type in your question, get your answer on your data. Totally changes the world. For the simplicity, it's hard, and the simplicity makes all
Get your answer and get your answer in the form of beautiful data visualizations as well, right? Not just text boxes and tables and so forth. So on Monday afternoon, when we opened the conference, I asked a question: how many people have used ChatGPT? And almost every hand went up. I'm not going to ask, but I'm guessing if I said how many of you are actively working with machine learning models inside your enterprise, fewer hands would go up. I would love if we could start, Jean, maybe with you in this case. Could you share a simple use case that is either an active one that you can share with a customer in terms of the types of insights that machine learning is capable of producing that is very different than what one might expect from results around generative AI, because we're really introducing the concept of other forms of AI here. We didn't want to do the whole thing around generative, so I want to celebrate the forms of AI that have been around for a while. So I'd love to hear from all three of you on that, but we'll go Jean, Maya, and then Jignesh.
Okay. Well, one use case that we just finished is we do a lot of work in corporate travel, so trying to reconcile various data sources, credit cards, expense reports, travel management company data, and reconciling all that to make sure that the spend is proper. But one of the things that we've had to develop is a calculator for CO2 emissions for air travel. So when you get on a plane, jet fuel is an incredibly powerful product. It's got a power to weight ratio that's fantastic. It's going to be very hard to get rid of. It's a long story in and of itself, but companies now have to report their emissions in Europe starting next year, starting Q1 next year. So if you take a flight, how much CO2 did you use or emit? So we use two not too deep neural networks to be able to predict how much time a flight is going to spend in the air and what the load factors are going to be, how many passengers, how much cargo. And we have data sets that go back 20 years from Bureau of Transportation Statistics, from a variety of data sources, OAG, FlightAware. All these are large aviation data companies. We know when the plane is at the gate, we know when it leaves, we know how much time it spends on the ground, we know how much time it flies, we know how much time it spends on the ground, and we know how much time it takes to get to the gate where it's going. So when we started, everyone was taking the distance from the airport. So you would take the great circle distance because the Earth is not flat; it's round, or kind of round, and so the first thing I said when we started was that's complete rubbish, because if you've ever flown to Chicago and spent an hour circling over O'Hare, you know I didn't want to pick on Chicago because it's close to Madison, but that's the one I spend the most time circling.
Could have said Dallas.
It goes around and around. So the amount of time you spend in the air dictates how much CO2 you emit. And so we use what's called deep neural networks to figure out the loads and the time in the air before we ever get the actual data. So we have to, because when you're booking your flight, and if you're trying to be conscientious of the environment, you want to be able to pick a flight that has the lowest CO2, assuming it gets you where you want to go, et cetera. So so there's a pre-booking concept, so you have to predict it. So that's a typical example where it's, you know, it's not incredibly complicated. It's not the world's most difficult problem, but AI does a brilliant. It's the best way to predict these things in order for us to get the best answer. So to give some context, we tested the prediction engine against 32,000 flights in and out of Germany. We picked Germany. It's a long story. There's a reason for it. We had a customer reason. In October in 2022, and the delta between the prediction and the actual, once we had all the actual data, there was a difference of 1% between the two for the 32,000 flights in total.
Wow.
And the mean absolute error between the predictions over 32,000 flights for an individual flight was around 10%. So you use AI to get the right answer, not to tell everybody how smart you are. You got to get the right answer.
And the customer there is an airline because not only do they have compliance issues around reporting CO2, but perhaps they have favorable market advantage. If they're low CO2, they can market that to potential customers of theirs.
Well, it's not the airline is one issue, but the actual companies that have their employees fly, those are called Scope 3 emissions under greenhouse gas protocols.
Got it.
Scope 3 emissions have to be reported under the new European Union rules, and the SEC is about to do the same thing in the United States. So globally, all the enterprises, especially public companies, are going to have to report, and there's going to be no more allowance for what's called greenwashing. Greenwashing is an infamous term in sort of this area where you just throw numbers on the table, fire it away to the shareholders, and say, well, that's what our emissions are. You're going to actually have to calculate them now and be careful because there will be legal liability with them. So that's a typical example of a problem that can AI be helpful? You have to test it. You have to understand the problem. You have to go and look at it. You have to do some work, and it gets the best answer, which is great because it helps us tremendously in doing all of this work.
Thanks for that one. Maya, how does Savvy AI help organizations bridge the gap between having a bunch of data and extracting insights from that data?
Well, let's start with like where AI is useful in an organization. And look, anywhere you have a decision tree, anywhere you have a hard-coded if-then statement is an opportunity to build a smarter process or a smarter workflow with machine learning. Like there are use cases all over your organization. It doesn't have to have the complexity of emissions. It can have the simplicity of, we have clients that use machine learning for FP&A analysis, large banks who are doing manual FP&A budgeting and forecasting with Excel, who are doing it faster and smarter with machine learning models. We have clients that are payment solutions providers that were deciding when to accept, reject, or review a transaction. This is a great example of a machine learning use case. We have other clients that are large lenders that were using machine learning to classify income data that was coming in. It was someone's manual job to look through different rows of data and decide, is this a side hustle? Is this their Etsy shop? Is this real W-2 income? So there's so many uses all over an organization where you can take the data that's coming in and make better continuous decisions with it with machine learning. And I think the best way also to look at it is when you look at your organization, where do you have problem sets that are data rich, that are operationally relevant, and that reoccur frequently? And these are like great low-hanging fruit cases as you're thinking about extracting those insights. But more than extracting insights, machine learning takes that, you know, that data is oil statement. Of course you do, you're from Texas, you know oil. So that data is oil statement, well, think of AI and machine learning is refining that oil into gasoline that's going to power your company. It's that next logical step of, I've been looking at my data, I've been looking at it in Excel, I've been looking at it on a visualized dashboard. Now I want to start making automation of predictions and decisions that help me just work better and more efficiently.
Thank, Thanks, Maya. So over the last few days, I've mentioned a few times that we have upskilling programs here at IO. One of those is around data analytics. We'll be adding AI in Q3 or Q4 of this year. But I also want to be clear that it's not called the upskilling outpost, it's called the innovation outpost. And so one of the ways in which we can work with companies like DataChat, Savvy AI, and Cerebri AI are around collaborative innovation. And whether it's solving wicked problems in beef and dairy, leveraging Cerebri, or it's some of the use cases that Maya just mentioned, we're looking to bring solution providers who we know well, trust those solutions, vet those solutions, and then bring groups together to really de-risk the adoption of AI in your businesses. And so while we started with a 9-hour kickoff across 3 days, we expect to continue this in a series that is a couple of hours on one day, where we're aimed specifically at particular use cases that might be of interest in your organizations, where solution providers like the three you see on the screen can play a role. And so, Jignesh, I'll turn it over to you. I'd love to hear your example from a DataChat perspective.
Yeah, that's great. I'll give you two examples. One is at Meta, where one of the problems they had to solve is they were going to go into a new lease agreement with a cell phone provider. And obviously at Meta scale, it's not going to be 1 or 2 cell phones they're trying to lease for their employees. It's going to be a very large number. And then to figure out, should we lease or buy the equipment outright? Now, tease that out. Now, imagine this is happening in the BU that needs to make this decision. And the BU doesn't have an army of data scientists. Right? The BU has to now do self-serve data science to make a sound data-driven decision. And so for that, they then had to pull data related to repair logs for phones for different vendors for that provided from the past. And this being Meta, they've been giving phones to their employees since the start of the mobile revolution. So there's a ton of data with repair log data. Now they want to pull that in, all without putting a piece of code, pull that into DataChat, and then start to do these ad hoc what-if analyses, right? Which is to say, what's the average lifetime for these phones for these generations, and to better understand what the repair cycle looks like, because from that they can understand what's the repair cost, especially in the lease terms in the first 1 year, if you're doing a 1-year lease or a 2-year lease or a 3-year lease, and they can then understand whether it is worth for them to buy a lease. They took that information and then went into the vendor, better armed with data, to come up with a far richer, far better contract terms for themselves. So that's at the very high end, where the BU has to make decisions. And sometimes these contractual decisions have to be made not in a matter of like months or weeks. It has to be made in a matter of days, right? So you really want the self-serve stuff in a non-trivial, sophisticated fashion. At the other end of the spectrum, one of our newer customers, this being Wisconsin, is a very Wisconsin company. They put little sensors on cars, and from that sensor, they collect data to build and then build models to get early warnings about whether that specific animal might be showing early signs of certain health problems. Now they have one data scientist at hand, but as John alluded to before, once all of this data comes in from the IoT sensors, they have to go and figure out, is this data even sensible? They have to go through that extract, load, cleaning phase before they can do any deep modeling in it. And here is a person who can write code, but they don't want to spend 80% of the time doing the type of stuff of understanding that data and getting it ready for doing something more sophisticated with it. So this person will then come into DataChat, do that 80% work, but do it in a fraction of a time, and then still write code on cooking up a 7-layer neural network, because that's the model that they need to fit for that specific application, and then do that. So it's like process across that bridge, there are pain points across the spectrum. And of course, the tech, one of our other customers is looking at oil rig data. They're a consulting firm that consults for Halliburton, and they're doing similar type of stuff. They can write code, but they don't want to do that 80% work, and they can just converse with the data to go and figure out what they need to do next. So really a broad spectrum. And it's essentially saying, regardless of what your data skills are, there's some amount of work that either you can't do, which you can do with data chat, some amount of work that you don't want to do because it's a dull, boring stuff, and we take pain away on both those ends of the spectrum.
Let's talk about workforce for a second. So a few years ago, there was a lot of hype in the media around, every company's going to need data scientists. And I remember having coffee, I think, or maybe it was later in the day, but it may have still been coffee, with Jignesh. And I remember Jignesh, who teaches PhD level students, a data scientist, saying, there's a lot of bad data scientists too. And we shouldn't be in such a rush to go out and hire data scientists, maybe data analysts, maybe data engineers, and so forth. As this is for everybody, but Jignesh in particular to begin, as things have matured a little bit, certainly you and Maya, both your companies are pretty strong in messaging around democratizing data insights, democratizing analytics, data science, et cetera. So over the last few years, has that rung true? We don't really need to spend or invest as much on the data science side at each individual organization, but rather solution providers like the three of you, or pick your spots, right? Like you just gave some examples, Jignesh. So what's your take on what hiring needs are in small and medium-sized businesses to get a data strategy, and if that's solid, an AI strategy off the ground?
Yeah, great question. So maybe, Todd, I don't know if you wanted me to start first.
Yeah, go for it.
So I think it's all about that word that you used just a little while back, Todd, which is that upskilling, which is essentially what we are doing. If you just went and said, what did a data scientist do 5 years ago? They were doing a lot of mechanical work and getting paid a lot for that. The good data scientists were not doing a lot of that. They were actually doing the deeper work of understanding mathematical models and building very precise models that were domain specific and application specific. It seems like the type of stuff that Maya and her team do when they go in and solve very domain specific problems, right? So I think what has happened is that for all of us, our skill set has to be something that is elevated to the next level where the human intelligence really matters. And the toolification of the grunge work, which maybe we were getting paid for and were very happy about it, that's just gone. Automation is going to take over. So things that the machine can do, and increasingly the machine can do a lot more things, a lot more easily, faster, and a more reproducible way, is gone. But where the humans need to go is to work at that innate level of human intelligence. So, if you think about the difference between a data analyst and a data scientist, the primary difference used to be that the data analyst is closer to the BU, will understand what's a good way to calculate profit for the product, right? The database table may have a column called P_12, but the business analyst will know that that's not the right column, but you have to take that stuff multiplied by this other column, and that's the measure. So that's the business insights that they know. Or they may know that to calculate profit, you can't just sum up the sales. You have to also think about returns and remove that to be able to figure out what was the realized revenue. So it's that business intelligence, that person having that semantic understanding of how the business works, having that understanding about data is important. They now don't need to be a 5-star Python or SQL programmer to get their job done. They can be elevated where they can start making these decisions at a much higher level. So we still need humans. We need the humans that can actually provide the intelligence that is very specific to what humans can provide. And we just need to learn now how to work better with the machines. So that equation is changing in a dramatic way. And it's not going to go away. But the good news is, for those of us who are willing to change, there's a lot of room. Humans can do a lot more, right? So it's like, are we ever going to run out of doctors because radiology is getting automated? We don't have enough doctors. We don't have enough of the best data scientists. We're not going to run out of them. Do we need the data scientists that were cut and paste monkeys? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Maya, what are your thoughts on that? Oh, well, we already got those then. You mind?
No, I was nodding and I was clapping because I just think Jignesh brings up so many excellent points. But first of all, listen, I believe data scientists are wonderful, smart people, that there are big thorny problems out there that need data science help, like protein folding, self-driving cars, anti-money laundering, fraud, climate analysis. Like I could go on and on. There's a lot of big thorny problems. And the role of data science won't go away because we need their big math brains on those. What I think is happening is this is a natural evolution of any technology. Remember when there was this person at your company that was called like a DBA, a database admin, and they wore like a matrix like outfit and had little glasses, and like they were the ones that could extract the data and nobody else could, and nobody else could talk to the data, and then Snowflake came along and was like, hold my beer. Well, it's sort of this natural evolution that's happening in data science as well, is that as the industry matures, which it is doing, it's been around for like a couple of decades now, you're starting to see that migration of skill set moving downstream from specialists that are needed for everything to empowering business users to solve their own problems and their own use cases. And that's what we're super focused on at Savvy. It's just like, how do you take it to Jignesh's point? How do you take a business unit owner, a product owner, and say, you know what? I know you've been in queue waiting for kind of attention from your data science team for the last year or two. How about we just give you a tool where in 5 minutes you can go solve your own problem and launch a model that works for your specific needs? So that's what's happening, but that's a natural progression. It doesn't mean that certain people aren't useful. It just means that their skill sets should be attached to like these core problems in an organization and not necessarily to the everyday problems that are right now being solved poorly with like spreadsheets and data visualizations. So yeah, I think there's a ton of room for people in this. I absolutely agree. It's about upskilling and making sure the organization can really take advantage of these tools.
Thanks, Maya. Jean, over to you on that same point.
Well, to me, it's just simple economics. If an application has a value to you in your eyes or your organization, how much is it going to cost to be better? And better means make better decisions. So this is all about decision support, whether you're using ChatGPT or using super sophisticated DNN, it doesn't matter. So in the end, some problems have value intrinsic to them that allows you to go a deep dive with the brain surgeons, and some things just not worth it. And the reason why there's a lot of less than adequate data scientists is because the business world has gone through a massive transition from we started in reporting, then we went to business intelligence, could only handle a few amount of variables, regression stuff, rules, and then we jumped to models, sophisticated models, and you can't make the jump without a lot of academic training. That's what we found. So, PhDs are made for a reason. That's what they do. That's their job. And they're good at it, really good at it. So now we're finding problems where we're using compound techniques. We use models that feed a model that get the answer because it's worth it for some problems. So any medium and small enterprise have to decide what decision support they can afford, because there's no point in getting the right answer if you go bankrupt. That doesn't work, right? So you have to be smart about how you pick your spots, about where you go, what you use, and you have to be extremely skeptical of the vendors. And I speak as a vendor. There's a lot of bogus AI running around, and you can find a consultant on every street corner who can help you with your data science problem, and you have to be careful because it's in vogue and it's very popular.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit as a group. Over the last couple of days, as we've been talking about generative, you can imagine that bad actors and deep fakes and some of the cyber security threats and data privacy, et cetera, we've treaded on that ground. Jean just raised an interesting point. Where do the risks lie? Are they the same risks when we think about big data sets and machine learning and items like that strategically when you're thinking about those pieces? Maya, what kinds of threats do we need to be aware of in that realm rather than generative?
Well, look, there is this thought that the machine learning is as good as the data you're going to feed it. And if you encode the data with human biases and bad decisioning, it's going to learn on the patterns of human biases and bad decisioning. It's a lot of the reason that, when you look at the financial services sector, you only want to go so far back in history. Otherwise, you run into redlining and other problems. And you just don't want to go that far back. You want to teach it better habits and better behaviors rather than just teaching it on bad behaviors and bad habits. So I think obviously that's a problem. I mean, I think that that's overcomeable if you start learning with new data and you start collecting new data and create feedback loops and also have human in the loop. Like, none of this is about supplementing necessarily human intelligence. And I think it's a mistake to think that the whole purpose of machine learning is necessarily machine intelligence versus machine usefulness. Like, I'm reading this great book called Power and Progress, and the authors wrote about how we should seek to make these tools useful to ourselves and useful in pursuing the things that humans are really good at and amplifying that, rather than necessarily outsourcing our intelligence to them altogether and saying, well, the data set says do this, and I'm going to let that override all my free thinking. So I think there's a fine balance there. I think having humans in that feedback loop is going to be very important in balancing that critically with our data sets as well.
Thanks. Jignesh, did you have anything to add to that piece of the conversation before we move on to questions from the audience?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is the same technology, whether it is machine learning or AI, can produce a lot of fake data that you can't distinguish. So the one thing I would say is be wary of tools that say I can detect deep fakes, because those tools are the generative technology, the machine learning is always going to be ahead of the tools. You're going to rely on institutional processes via governance and other human trainable mechanisms to really get ahead. It's like technology beats technology, but the bad technology to do bad stuff is always going to be a little bit ahead. So you can't, the solution lies in having better architectures at the human level, at the organizational level, to catch against bad decision making from bad data. You will have bad data. It will be nearly impossible to detect that there's bad data in what you're doing, what you have.
Thanks. If you have a question that you'd like to ask of the CEO, just put your hand up, and Austin Rios from our team will find you with the microphone.
Hi, can you hear me?
No.
No?
Can you guys hear on that end?
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So my question is, so you are all executives in AI companies. I'm wondering about the business model. So are you primarily developing custom solutions for customers, or have you developed like a service and then charge for subscriptions, or perhaps you're providing or offering consulting services to your customers?
Yeah, so that's actually a mixed bag across the three. Jean and Cerebri AI are a little more custom, but both SavvyAI.com and DataChat.ai have subscription solutions, and I'm sure can build custom apps as well. But that's my input. Would love to hear from the three of you in terms of the business model and what you've explored and where you're going next. And if there's another question from the room, we can get Austin over there as well.
Yeah, maybe I can go first. Yeah, Todd, exactly as you said. We are a SaaS product. We have a free tier service too for a product. So if you really wanted to sign up at the end of this session, go to datachat.ai. Right at the top is a try me button, and you could try it. So we are a horizontal platform over which people can build solutions. We right now don't build custom solutions, we'd love to partner with other people like John and Maya to go build up a platform. We are a platform company.
Yeah, we are as well. So we charge based on usage. We believe that if we bring value because you're using our product, that's how you should pay. So it's not a seat license model. It's a SaaS-based model and usage. We really modeled ourselves after the folks at Snowflake, who really realized that if you can tie the value of your product towards your customer's success with it, everybody wins. And that's what we were looking to do as well.
We sell to large enterprises, so just to give you some context, in our corporate travel business, which is where we spend most of the time at the moment, we just responded to an RFP for a Fortune 10 company. They buy 300,000 airline tickets a year. They have 72,000 people that travel. So these enterprises spend, that particular one, I think, spends around $400 million a year in travel, corporate travel for the enterprise globally. So when companies like that have ask for solutions, we have a SaaS model as well, but they tend to have particular needs that may require a special work for them and them alone. But if it's high value and it adds to the solution, then that's perfectly fine. AI is a very interesting business model at the moment because it's the first technical discontinuity that's been attacked globally all at the same time. There isn't a country in the world that isn't doing AI at the moment. Everyone focuses on China and the United States, but you go to any country and any continent, they're working on AI. And that's the first time, the cell phone stuff started here and the desktop started here, et cetera. So consulting in AI is fast approaching the commodity level because there's so many people doing consulting. So it's a really good business if you have the ability to attract customers. Consulting's great, but it's very competitive. My biggest competitor in enterprise is not another vendor like Maya or Janesh. My biggest competitor is the internal lab in India that charges less than half for the headcount than my staff does. So we are very, very focused on high value added metrics and analytics that we provide the customers, and we do a better job than just about anyone in our industry. So we have a SaaS model, but it's oriented different than what you've seen from Maya and Janesh, just because our customers are big companies.
We have time for one more question down front here.
Hi. So given the difficulties in explaining how AI models actually work, such as like neural networks and deep learning algorithms, where do you see your corporations going in terms of accountability of the applications that you're providing, especially if they're going to be used in potentially high hazard or high risk applications?
Good to end on a softball.
Yeah. What do you mean by accountability?
So if it leads somebody to come to the wrong conclusion given the data that it was trained on, is that a failure of the data set that was provided, or is that an issue with the algorithm itself?
Well, that's a good question. So at the end of the day, you take if you have a high value application that requires high end data science, you're very, very careful about your data. You do a lot of testing. You look at your model, and as things change over time, you have to be careful it doesn't start to deviate from the results you're expecting. But you're only as good as the people who build the model and the data that you have. Now, you can get the wrong answer for a number of reasons. A, the model wasn't very good to start with. B, the data changed over time. I'll give you a good example. We worked with a bank in Toronto. They're the largest auto lender in Canada. They do almost 1 million applications a year. They retrain their models every 3 years, and COVID hit. Boom. So how do you deal with COVID when you retrain your models to do decisions, but you only do it every 3 years. So you have to be very cognizant that given how fast the world is moving right now, that bank maybe should retrain the model with all its latest data. Maybe they should train it every 3 months, not every 3 years, right? And even maybe every month. So there's a lot of things you can do to avoid being stupid.
Jignesh, did you want to jump on that point about avoiding being stupid?
No, I think John said it really good. But the only additional thing I would add beyond all the things is like whatever thing that you're using could have some errors. You need processes outside, right? Like, for example, Intel had a bug in their floating point unit. Your software could be perfectly right. You were still getting the wrong answers for a little while and you don't know. So our approach at Data Chat is, look, there's nothing foolproof, but we can maybe help a little bit beyond doing the types of things that John mentioned, the testing and all of that stuff. And the key word for us is transparency, which is we will tell you why we did something, why we gave you that answer, so that it helps you a little bit more in trying to get that confidence. Nothing is going to be foolproof, but maybe we can help a little bit more.
Maya, any closing thoughts?
First of all, I was just laughing so hard because I was like, we retrain models nightly, and you're saying the bank only retrains its models every 3 years? Like, I was horrified. But I'm going to build upon what Janesh said. It's transparency, it's auditability, and it's guardrails. We work primarily with regulated industries, and a lot of them. So it is what I call just basic foundational elements of our system include complete model transparency. What's the model doing? Why is it doing it? What data is feeding the model? Auditability, you can go audit down to the individual decision level. So if I called up my bank and said, you didn't give me a credit card because I'm a woman in this zip code, you can go audit the decision that the model made and said, no, that's not at all what happened. We didn't know you're a woman, and here were the factors that we weighted. And finally, guardrails. And I think this can't be stressed enough. You don't have to let the AI into the wild without business rules attached to it. Like, it's not just like either max AI or max business rules. There's a level in between where you can have the machine learning learn in a sandbox that you're comfortable playing in. And the way to do that is to attach business rules on top of a model and to say to it, okay, you can make any decisions, but these decisions are not acceptable because they're illegal or against our business practices. So don't even consider them. So there are checks and balances that can be in place. And honestly, if you're working with, I don't care if you're working with a consultant, you're working with us, you're working with anyone on your team, if you don't have those basic checks and balances in place, you should ask questions immediately, because it's your reputation, it's your company's reputation that'll ultimately be at play when you launch these systems.
Yep.
Hey, lots of agreement. Jean, Jignesh, Maya, thank you all for spending an hour with us. Really appreciate all of the time and the generosity and the insights. Thank you very much. Hopefully we'll talk with all of you soon, or each of you soon, and if I can connect the three of you, I'm happy to do that as well, so just let me know.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much. Take care. And so that's it. There's no bourbon tasting tonight. There's no barbecue. We do have some beer and snacks and water and soda and so forth. But I want to say thank you for taking parts of 3 days of your lives. And hopefully this was a worthwhile exercise, both in terms of the hands-on pieces and some of the experts you're able to hear from regionally and nationally. And there will be more of these. They won't be as onerous across 3 days, but I think we're off to a good start. Just want to say thank you to everybody. Thank you. Hey, AJ, can you give me the mic again? Give me the mic. I don't know. Oh, can you sound it? Thank you. See you. Thanks, Alex.
Very good.
Thanks for all your help.
Rest.
I'm going to. Hey, one more quick thing. You will be seeing a survey from us over the next couple of days. The only incentive we have is if you send it back, the next program will be better, and we'll send you an AI guide for your business over the next week or so. We're building that right now as a reward for those who take the time to give us feedback. So thanks very much. Thanks, Jay. Thank you. Thanks.